Ozark returned for its third season this spring, and I, Golder Reese-Riley Chow, am here with Armando Salas, who was director of photography for the majority of the season. Now, you actually came on board last season, so going back to that, how do you add your own touch to a show that has such a signature look and a signature color palette with the blue and the cyan?
Well, when I came on season 2, fortunately, I was a fan of the show, and the aesthetic that was established was something that I embraced. So at that point, you know you're living within kind of the parameters of the look of the show, but every cinematographer is going to bring their unique perspective to that look. And hopefully for the audience at home, it's a seamless transition. Then for season 3, the look evolved considerably from that of season 2.
Okay, so go into that. How did the look evolve?
Well, the as the look of any show, as the story progresses, as the characters change and grow, so should the look along with it. So even though we still have the kind of the signature Ozark look as a baseline, there's a lot of deviations from that, both for new characters and new locations. For instance, we're getting to the Navarro cartel in Mexico, to kind of the Bird's elevated place in society and within the Navarro organization opening a casino. So it was important to not get stuck making the same decisions as the story evolves and grows. The look of the show should grow with it, and hopefully as the audience is kind of digest anything that we're doing, to help them kind of process that information.
Now, the show goes through a lot of color processing to achieve its look. So how do you balance what you achieve on the day while shooting versus what you're going to correct later in post?
A very heavily manipulated show. We have a handful of camera LUTs that we use, and it stays pretty true to that in post-production. So when we are doing, when you see a cold exterior where the characters are kind of living in the shadows and there's just a hint of dappled light in the background, that's something on set. It's like these characters are always operating in the darkness and the shadows and hiding their true selves from society. And so that's something that we build into the camera negative, and then just gets enhanced in post-production to fine tune, whether it's weather or scenes that have to be broken up over multiple days or whatever the case may be. It's not heavily manipulated. The dailies and the final color are very much in the same line. There's just an enhancement and a fine tuning of the image.
Can you talk about your collaboration with camera operator Ben Seminoff? Because he's actually been nominated for a couple of awards for camera operation, but I feel like that's something that's kind of hard to see as a viewer, what he's bringing.
Yeah, I mean, as a cinematographer, you have two key aspects to what you're doing, the lighting and the camera work. And so for me, it's all encompassing, right? What the camera sees and how it's lit, the staging, the blocking, the composition, the way the camera moves should all, fall into one thing that is seamless and not at odds with each other. And Ben is a phenomenal operator. So with very quick shorthand, he can build and execute the shot so that it not only is very effective, whether we're moving the camera or it's just about finding the right composition in a static frame, but that it happens very quickly and seamlessly while I'm focusing on lighting the shot. As most people know in the TV industry, we don't get a lot of time to shoot the show, so everything has to move very, very quickly in order to capture the scale of this kind of a show and the time that we have to shoot it.
I think the show has a lot of long takes, oneers, more than you would realize. I think if you weren't paying attention. And I'm wondering what kind of conversations you have to have with the production designer and that team in order to make those happen.
Well, fortunately, on Ozark, we get to prep the show. So season 3, there was actually 3 cinematographers, as you mentioned. I shot the majority of the season, but Ben Cutchins, who's been there since the beginning, was shot 3 episodes, and Manuel Beleder shot 1 episode. So that gives us the ability to prep with the director and with the production designer. So as we are designing a particularly difficult or elaborate shot, effortless and seamless. In fact, we don't even want the audience to really know that there isn't a cut. It's more to allow you to absorb that story without an interruption until it's desired. And that sometimes means the set is built to the specs of the shot, particularly very large installs like the exterior casino where we had a couple of events and a concert, or something as simple as the cell that Marty is in Mexico. We want to make sure that the set and the camera and the integrate in a way that does not add any, that we're not working against the parameters of the set, that it's all kind of built to execute the look and the shot that's been designed.
Now, in doing Ozark interviews and reading and watching other ones at other outlets, I keep hearing about the mega block or super block that closed out the season, where you had these 4 episodes that were all shot together. But I understand that was not originally the plan. So how did that block come about?
Well, the specifics I'm not 100% on. I mean, that's more producerial decisions. I think it was just about efficiency of these locations in Atlanta are so far apart that by kind of cross-boarding those 4 episodes, we could stay in one place longer without having to burn a lot of time and company moves. So I think it was really just a question of logistics and efficiency. And Alec Sakharov directed those 4. He had been there on season 2 as well. He directed 2 on season 2. And so I think the producers felt comfortable with him doing that many episodes. And so we went for it. It was definitely challenging, definitely a grind to prep and keep that many balls up in the air for that long, but it worked out well in the end.
So he was the original cinematographer on The Sopranos and Game of Thrones. He won an Emmy for Rome for that cinematography. What's it like working with somebody with that kind of a background as your director?
Well, you don't really need to guess at the technique. When we have a conversation in pre-production, you can get right to the nitty-gritty because I don't need to interpret, an idea or a concept in a much more vague term. So he'll say something very specific, including camera move and staging, and then I'm basically collaborating with him on how to execute that and hopefully how to enhance it, how to bounce ideas off each other. So in the end, we have something that's been refined and hopefully elevates the work. And of course, because he has an understanding of my job, a deep understanding, he knows what I'm up against in terms of continuity for daylight exteriors or a location that is very tough on us in terms of limitations for lighting or staging. And so we can work together on the most efficient way to shoot a scene, whether it means we might start on a close-up of one of the actors and end with the wide shot so that we can maximize daylight, or shooting a certain direction first and just being prepared for that in the day as he's discussing with the actors why we're starting a certain way.
So for the Emmys, you're actually submitting a clip from an earlier episode. You're submitting the episode Boss Fight. And the way the cinematography categories work at the Emmys, you are only submitting like a 5-minute clip from that episode for consideration for the judging panel. So I'm wondering, what clip did you choose and why?
Well, I chose Boss Fight mainly because there were so many different looks in that episode. We introduced the Navarro compound, the interior of the Navarro compound, his conference room. Marty is held in a cell there. There's a flashback to Marty's youth as he's held in isolation, and there's basically jumping around in time and space and in locations. And I thought it was just a very dynamic episode, and it really, I think, showed off visually a lot of different looks that we weren't used to seeing on the show, yet hopefully feel completely integrated and seamless in the final edit.
Can you tell me about shooting that torture sequence where there has to be a lot of light, but yeah, you can't overwhelm the viewer, I guess, and you have to stay true to the look of the show?
Yeah, the torture lights is an interesting challenge because we wanted to feel bright. We want the viewer to understand that Marty's being overwhelmed and flooded with light, but we also don't want to hurt the viewer's eyes, and we want to stay within the kind of dim tonal range that we're used to seeing on the show. So we basically retrofitted some flood lamps with lower wattage bulbs and shot with rehoused vintage lenses and a filter that helped kind of distort and stretch the lights. And the combination of going from a very, very low key neutral tonal range to a very distorted streaking amber light, and of course with Jason Bateman's performance, it all comes together so that you get to feel and experience the torture without actually having your eyes blown out.
Do you know what section of the episode is being submitted for the Emmys?
I think it's the beginning. It's like from the kidnapping to the family members coming together. It's all these bits and pieces of time leading up to Marty being dumped in at the front steps of the compound till he kind of wakes up in the cell.
All right, we'll look that up. Netflix is also campaigning you for Raising Dion, which is another show that you did this season. Do you know what episode and what clip you're submitting for that show in the same category?
Give me a second.
Yeah.
I believe it's I believe Netflix is submitting the pilot for Raising Dion. But I'm not 100% sure on that. It's happened a few weeks ago, and it's been such a whirlwind in terms of everything in the news lately that's hard to keep up. But yeah, I mean, Raising Dion is a completely different look to Ozark, so it's kind of fun to revisit that and take a look at those in category basically.
Yeah, so that show you're coming on as the original cinematographer. So can you tell me about establishing the look for that show and what you set out to achieve?
So I prepped with the producing director, Steve Mann, for several weeks. And in pre-production, we shot tests and we had a lot of discussions about the look of the show. And it was basically juxtaposing really intimate storytelling about a mother and her 7 raising alone, and these magical events that start to develop and become more intense as you realize that Dion has powers. So we went with a large format camera. We shot on the Alexa LF. We decided to shoot even for portraits. The camera's always very close to the actors, so that's very intimate, but there's a large canvas there, so you still get to feel and experience their surrounding environment. And along with those intimate portraitures, we go to extreme wides and big developing masters so that you can kind of get the scale of what's going on. In particular, something like, I believe they're submitting for the Emmys, where he inadvertently, while fishing in the middle of the lake, creates a storm, and all the trees surrounding the lake are flexing and breaking, and the boat is being churned about as the waves are getting more intense, and there's a wind formed from him not being able to control his powers.
All right, and finally, with your trained eye when you're watching television, I'm wondering, what is your biggest pet peeve when it comes to cinematography by others?
Oh, when I watch TV, for the most part, I just disconnect and enjoy the show. So usually when I see something that I really love, that's when it stands out to me, not vice versa. So I visit and rewatch a show when I'm impressed by the craftsmanship and the cinematography.
All right, Armando, thanks so much for taking the time to chat. We look forward to seeing more of Ozark and Raising Dion. And to our viewers, you can check out Gold Derby's YouTube channel for other Ozark chats, and goldderby.com for our prediction center, where you can log your own Emmy predictions.